The Selous Scout Regiment of Rhodesia was formed in 1973. Its purpose on formation was the clandestine elimination of Zandler and Zipra terrorists, both within and outside Rhodesia's borders. This is the story of what was required of a soldier to be a Selous Scout. Of all volunteers that were selected to start training, between 12 and 17% finally qualified to wear the coveted brown beret with a silver osprey.
Come all the soldiers of Selous. We are looking for our enemies who fight against Rhodesia. We live in the bush. We sleep in the bush, living like homeless ones, looking for our enemies who wish to destroy Rhodesia.
Modern conventional warfare has made elite troops out of the highly mechanized units. But in bush warfare, the elite are the combat tracker units. I'm Dave Patterson, and I'm with Lieutenant Colonel Ron Reed Daly, commander of the Selous Scouts, just such a combat tracker unit in Rhodesia, and I'd like to ask him why there is a tremendous amount of secrecy attached to his unit. Why the mystique about the Selous Scouts?
Well, this was largely brought upon by ourselves. I personally do not go for publicity. I think an awful lot of units have spoilt themselves by attracting an aura of sort of supermen, which doesn't do the ordinary soldier any good. He starts to get a distorted opinion of his own abilities, which is bad. One must never underestimate oneself, but one certainly should never overestimate oneself, and this is something that is likely to happen with a lot of publicity. Also, and the more important aspect was that of our African soldiers. Now, these chaps are beyond price to us. They are invaluable. The training they go through, the limited numbers that pass through, the volume that starts a course, all these sort of factors make this chap a very valuable part of the unit. We're very anxious that their faces are not known to the public, particularly the African public, because it is a fact that chaps have been taken out on what we call R&R, rest and recuperation, when they go back to their home areas. We have in fact lost 4 men like this, and this was the prime reason we avoided publicity.
One of the founder members of the Scouts is the officer commanding training troop. I asked him about discipline.
Discipline in any young soldier is tremendously important, because once a soldier has learned to accept the forced or the imposed discipline, it is very easy for him to practice self-discipline. I feel that if a man wants to join the army, he expects the discipline, and when he gets harsh discipline, he realizes that it is only for his own good, and he's far more able to accept this harsh discipline. He's confined, he's not allowed time to think from anything else but the army, and this has had a very significant bearing on our young recruits. I think possibly people who don't know the unit or don't know the workings of the unit think that the unit is unregimented, because eventually this young recruit will be taken into the bush environment, and his modus operandi will be totally divorced from the harsh discipline. This is why we put so much emphasis on this disciplinary phase, so that it can instill in his mind the aspects of discipline which can very easily and will very readily be brought to bear if the circumstances require.
The unit is multiracial. It is entirely voluntary. They're all volunteers. To get into the unit, each man has to pass a pretty rigorous selection course. It's a very hard course. The percentage pass rate varies from 12% to 17%.
Now, the selection course is run over a 17-day period, and is a time where soldiers are tested, are presented with problems to see whether they represent the material required for a Selous Scout soldier. Basically, there are three areas in which we look at. We look at the psychological approach of a soldier. We look at his physical capabilities. And thirdly, we look at the standard of training that he has attained at that time. Because of the nature of the work, it is important that a soldier has the right mental approach to his work. And this is tested in a number of ways. We make him physically tired, in that he gets very little sleep in the duration of the course.
Don't all that stiff, don't all that stuff. Hey, drop that bloody leg!
The food aspect is another area which has a tremendous mental strain or psychological impression on a man. He doesn't know when he's going to get his next good meal. He doesn't know whether it's going to be today, tomorrow, the day after. He is required to eat a bourbian, which he's probably unused to, although the flesh of a baboon is perfectly healthy. Psychologically, he is opposed to it, and this is an added strain to him.
As an instructor, how do you feel about driving men to these limits?
I feel nothing, personally. Just, they've got to experience it themselves. And before they came on the course, I'm sure they didn't expect their own bodies or their own minds to be able to take this. So that in itself proves it to themselves that they, just see how far they can push themselves.
He is shouted at, he is abused verbally, and a lot of people cannot stand this sort of treatment and punishment and will reject it. All this building up, this pressurizing the bugger, his mind, to see if he says eventually, stuff you with your bloody rubbish. And that is the very guy that we want out.
The endurance march is designed to take a man to the absolute threshold of his physical capabilities.
They are presented with a pack weighing up to 75 pounds. The important aspect of this is not the weight of the pack, but the fact that he's carrying 25 kg stone. This has got a two-edged effect. One, you've got the psychological effect, in that he knows that he can't eat his 25 kg when he gets to the other end. In fact, it's a worthless load. And secondly, it represents heavy equipment. A lot of people ask, well, why don't you give him the heavy equipment? If he wants to pack up in the chatin, you can hardly throw away the heavy equipment, but you can throw away rocks. Another area on the psychological side of things, he knows at any time he can throw away his rocks and give up. And this works on him.
The men covered a distance of approximately 120 kilometers in 4 days. They are fed a minimal amount of food, 1 packet of army-type dog biscuits and a tin of bully beef for this entire period. The going is of a very rough country and ends in climbing a hill feature which taxes these men to the limit. What made you go on? You knew you had to climb this hill.
Yeah, I know. I've tried this course before. I've just decided to give it another bash and get to break it.
You want to join the Scouts that badly?
Yeah, I want to join the Scouts, but also because I failed last time. I'm more determined now this time to pass it. I'm ready to go now. Go down. We've come up. I can go down now. I think if I come up, going down will be a bit easier.
You reckon you've finished the worst part of the course now?
Well, being so close to the end keeps one going. It's not so bad anymore. Even when you're really knocked out, you know you're near the end. Sometime tomorrow will be the end, and we'll be there.
On the last day, the home run is a speed march of 15 kilometers, carrying sandbags. Colonel Lee Daly, of 114 men on this course, only about 21 made the grade. Isn't that being too selective?
When you substitute quantity rather for quality, then you are asking for trouble. One of the hardest things to do in a unit is to maintain a standard, because as one builds up perhaps a reputation, people are apt to let things go to their head and things begin to slide. I think it's mandatory in these sort of units that a very rigorous selection is maintained so that the very best come in.
As an already trained black soldier in the Rhodesian Army, why did you go on this selection course?
I'm willing to pass the Selous Scout selection. I'm trying to join the Scouts, sort of superfy my soldiering, as I've always wanted to be at the top.
Well, was it as tough as you thought it was going to be?
Yes, it was. Surprisingly enough, it was not in the military context that I felt the toughness. It was in the limits of personal endurance, my personal endurance. I realised the physical aspect would be quite hard, but I never expected it to be combined, on the mental level. And psychologically, it was very tough.
Was the selection course as tough as you were led to believe it was going to be?
Yeah.
What was the hardest bit?
Endurance.
What did you have to do?
That was the hardest. Oh, you carry the bloody pack up and down those gummos all for 4 days, 3.5 days. It was rough.
What were you thinking about?
Nothing. Try and think about nothing.
Not food, not water?
If you think about food or water, he just buggers you up.
Well, do you think you're a Selous Scout now?
Well, not quite. Still got to do tracking course.
The basic tracking course deals in two areas of training. That is the practical and physical tracking of humans on the ground, and secondly, the area of bushcraft. Now, tracking of humans is a very complex subject, particularly armed humans, which we specialize in. A student or a soldier that comes on the course can only be given the fundamental basics of tracking. You give him all the help, you show him what he has to look for, and that it is up to him to learn. I would say 90% of students, possibly more, 95% of students who are presented with the fundamental principles of tracking, in the right environment and with the right coaching, pick them up and eventually progress to operational trackers. And this is what we try and achieve on the basic tracking course.
Next plant you're going to cover?
The second area that we deal with is bushcraft, a tremendously important area, and an area which we feel that every single infantier should be taught. This gives a man total confidence of his environment.
Smooth leaf, okay? The actual vine has got a smooth, flaky, white bark. Also, in the cross-section, you'll see definite figure of 8. To tap the water out of this plant, you start from the top, working down, cutting out 18-inch sections. Okay, reach up as high as you can, preferably climb the tree, and then cut it in this manner.
He is taught how to extract food from vegetation, water from vegetation.
It's burning now. Yeah. Again, what is water?
How to make fire from vegetation, string from vegetation. All these are basic requirements for a soldier living in a bush-type environment.
To make his own strings to catch some birds and games in the Gangan so that he can feed himself.
Also, they are taught the habits of game, habits of birds, how to trap. All this comes into the bushcraft, and it all means that if a man is working in an environment which he's totally familiar with, obviously he is going to be confident in that environment, and he's going to be able to track well in that environment. And this is the reason why the student-instructor relationship is very intimate, very close, and they go down to the real nuts and bolts of this particular piece of real estate that we live in, and that is the bush. Well, directly after the tracking course, people who have passed the selection course are put onto a parachuting course. And after they've qualified, they've got one further small phase of training, that is the polishing up. We now test, look, and make a final assessment of our finished product. They are then presented with their wings and berets, and they are then regarded as Selous Scouts.
In November 1980, the Selous Scouts Regiment, which had been feared more than any other Rhodesian unit by their former enemies, and in whose ranks they had wreaked such devastation, ceased to exist.
And warrant officers, take post. Sergeant Robin A, member of the Legion of Merit.
The Selous Scouts' success in the battlefield can be gauged by the fact that Combined Operations Rhodesia officially credited them with either directly or indirectly being responsible for the death of 68% of all terrorists killed within Rhodesia during the course of the war, with a loss of 35 men in the process.
645-102, acting Lance Corporal Muchanger, F.
The Selous Scouts earned an incredible total of 85 honours and awards, gaining the first of only 2 Grand Crosses of Valour ever awarded. Rhodesia is no more and has joined the pages of history, but her security forces can be proud of the fight they carried to the enemy, for they won all their battles but lost the political war. And the regiment of the Selous Scouts can stand tall and proud amongst the forefront of these fine men. The Selous Scouts were innovative, imaginative, and brought a new dimension to insurgency war on a scale never before seen in any guerrilla war in any other insurgency campaign. And perhaps the greatest strength of the regiment was its tremendous esprit de corps, which was such that it pulled together not only men of different races, but even turned terrorists and bonded them into a unique brotherhood. The Selous Scouts were a unique breed of Special Force soldier and have earned a special place in military history.
This is Socket Tower, this is Green Leader, how do you read? I'm going to... Tower, this is Green Leader. This is a message for the station commander at Mumbai from the Rhodesian Air Force. We are attacking the terrorist base at Westlands Farm at this time. This attack is against Rhodesian dissidents and not against Zambia. Rhodesia has no quarrel, repeat, no quarrel with Zambia or her security forces. We therefore ask you not to intervene or oppose our attack. Did you copy all that? Copied. Roger, thanks. Cheers.
Steady. Steady. Just a touch. Steady. 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 Confirm switching doors open. Yes, switching doors. Steady. Right, touch. I've got them in the field. Steady. I'm going to get them. Yes. Steady. Fucking beautiful. Steady. Steady. Now. Bomb's gone. They're running. Beautiful. Jesus Christ, you want to see all those fuckers? The fucking bombs are beautiful.
At 8:30 on the morning of Thursday, 19th October 1978, the Rhodesian Air Force mounted a short, sharp and effective bombing attack on Joshua Nkomo's Zimbabwe People's Republican Army Operations Headquarters, known as FC Camp, situated at Westlands Farm, some 15 kilometers north of Lusaka in Zambia. It has been reported from Lusaka that hundreds of terrorists were killed and hundreds more wounded. There were no Rhodesian casualties from this raid, and all aircraft returned safely to their bases. At 12:45 the same day, Rhodesian security forces mounted a combined air and ground attack on Mkushi training base, situated some 150 kilometers to the northeast of Lusaka. At the time of the attack, over 2,000 terrorists were recorded as being in the camp. The blackboard revealed that most of them had paraded that very morning. Several hundred SKS rifles of communist manufacture were recovered, along with a large number of landmines, rocket projectiles, grenades, and ammunition. The search of the camp revealed the usual Russian and Chinese literature emphasizing political indoctrination, as well as military training manuals and instructional notes written up by the trainee terrorists. A Russian army cap was also found. The personal records of the commander of the camp, Moses Pinda, showed quite conclusively that the camp was for terrorist training and not for refugees, as alleged by Nkomo. The camp was well established and efficiently laid out, with both permanent structures and some 50 marquees. Moses Pinda had his headquarters in a bunker in the center of the camp. Throughout the camp was an extensive trench system that many of the inmates had to make do with foxholes for their personal protection. Most of the terrorists wore some kind of uniform. Some were caught washing in the river. The dead near the headquarters area bear testimony to the efficiency of the raid. Several hundred terrorists are known to have been killed, and hundreds more must have been wounded. Some Zambian sources report casualties were as high as 1,500. Only one member of the Rhodesian security forces lost his life in this attack. Later the same afternoon, the Rhodesians mounted a third attack on a series of bases known as CGT, or Communist Guerrilla Training Camps, some 150 kilometers east of Lusaka, just off the Great East Road. It was obvious that word of the successful raids earlier in the day had reached the ears of the terrorists in CGT, and only token resistance was met. However, in the course of search and sweep operations, at least 50 more terrorists were killed. There were no members of the security forces killed in this attack. It is impossible to assess accurately the number of casualties suffered by the terrorists in all these operations. Even so, they are known to have been in excess of 1,000, and in the light of subsequent information coming out of Zambia, may run into several thousands. information recovered in these raids, the Rhodesian Air Force mounted yet another air attack at midday on Thursday, 2nd November 1978, with pinpoint accuracy on the logistical base situated near Lusaka. Reports from Lusaka are confusing, but suggest that this raid too was as successful as all the others.
Cranbourne Barracks, near Salisbury, base of the Rhodesian Light Infantry, the home of the Saints. Their regimental march, the origin of their name. The Saints celebrate a special occasion, Regimental Day. The 1st Battalion, the Rhodesian Light Infantry, holds open house and a memorial parade, during which the colours will be shown and good conduct and long service medals awarded. Today, they shed the workaday camouflage khaki for the elegance and polish of full-dress uniform. The RLI, a commando unit, is an elite force, immaculate on parade, potent in the field. Together for the first time, after many months of arduous duties in the valley, these hardened troops parade their colours with pomp and dignity before a proud audience of relatives, friends and admirers. Commanding the parade is Lieutenant Colonel John Hickman, MZ. The General Officer commanding the Rhodesian Army, Major General K.R. Coster, takes the salute and reviews the troops. The Rhodesian Light Infantry was officially formed on the 1st of February 1961 and became the first European regular battalion in the history of Rhodesia. On the 19th of June 1965, the colours were presented to the battalion by Sir Humphrey Gibbs on behalf of Queen Elizabeth II. Still in its early years, this unit has already gained an outstanding reputation on active service in the Zambezi Valley, where they've displayed considerable courage and skill in anti-terrorist operations. A large measure of the success in these operations is attributed to the Saints. And at a solemn service, they honor the few in that number who have given their lives for Rhodesia. After the parade, a static display shows the other side of the picture. Here are the teeth of the modern soldier. the complex and deadly weapons they handle with such skill. In the afternoon, the assault course competition, in which various troops compete over obstacles designed to test the stamina and will of the toughest soldier. With emphasis on physical fitness and teamwork, these commandos are put through their paces. The closely contested competition was completed in the record time of 11 minutes. Right now, they would prefer to be on a riverbank in Rhodesia's rugged eastern highlands, training to build up the initiative and physical fitness of the men. They are specialist soldiers, commandos all, who know that peak physical condition is all important under the grueling conditions on Rhodesia's borders. The troopies, as they're affectionately called, get every opportunity to progress to commissioned rank. Competition is keen. The standard is high. They are trained by experts in modern fighting techniques and weapon handling. Operating with the Royal Rhodesian Air Force, the Commando helicopter team is a deadly combination in bush warfare. Close cooperation exists between all branches of Rhodesia's security forces, which accounts for the mobility and flexibility of the ground troops. Always one step ahead of the enemy, striking with speed and efficiency, prepared at any time to take and hold the offensive. Skilled trackers pick up the scent, everyone alert. Contact. This is where that training really tells. Those endless months of hard grind. As bullets crack through the trees, perhaps their thoughts go back for a fleeting moment to that day when the Champion Assault Course team marched out proudly to collect the Thornley Trophy, named after one of their comrades who gave his life for his country. Finally, the retreat ceremony with its quiet dignity ends the eventful day, confirming our confidence in the saints, the men of the Rhodesian Light Infantry.
Early on the morning of the 19th of September 1978, a combined air and ground strike was made by the Rhodesian security forces against Robert Mugabe's Zan the terrorist bases situated near the town of Chimoio in Mozambique, some 75 kilometers from the Rhodesian border. The strike lasted for 4 days before the security forces withdrew back to Rhodesia, having successfully completed their mission. Security forces suffered 2 members killed and 2 other casualties with minor wounds. It is not the policy of the Rhodesian government or members of its security forces to attack installations belonging to the Mozambique government, innocent civilians, or even members of Frelimo, the Mozambique army. However, during the course of these operations, it became necessary to eliminate armored elements of the Frelimo army who had entered the area and were carrying out attacks on the Rhodesian forces, who were obliged to defend themselves against these attacks. In one such engagement, a number of Frelimo soldiers were killed, others wounded, and the Russian-built and supplied armored personnel carrier was totally destroyed along with other weapons. Because of the widespread nature of the camps and the speed of these operations, it is not possible to give accurate casualties suffered by the terrorists, but these are believed to run into hundreds. Many were killed and still many more are lying around in the bush, dying of their wounds or being burned to death in the raging bushfires. Others have been backloaded into their hospitals and their morale is at a very low ebb. Security forces recover as many arms of war as possible to prevent them falling back into the hands of terrorists and destroy them in situ, which is why the weapons are not seen next to their bodies. In this engagement, 9 terrorists were defending this trench, which contained plenty of food and ammunition to enable them to hold out for a long time. They opened fire on the approaching call sign, which then called for an airstrike, which had the desired effect, and some of the terrorists attempted to run away. These were killed by our forces, and those who attempted to fight it out from the trench were also killed. Several food caches were found in these camps, hidden under the trees, buried underground, or thrown into ant holes and covered with grass. This cache contained cartons of tinned mackerel, manufactured in Holland and supplied to the terrorists by a World Food Organization. The Rhodesians dined well that night, which was a welcome change to their rations, and what they couldn't eat, they destroyed. These camps had an extensive trench system throughout, and had the terrorists chosen to stay and fight, the Rhodesians would have been hard-pressed to winkle them out. Most of the trenches contained sufficient food and ammunition to have lasted a long time, but the terrorists did not seem to have any stomach for the cause in the face of determined attacks. Following the successful elimination of any terrorist opposition, the Rhodesians set about the task of destroying these bases and razing them to the ground. Dumps of weapons and ammunition were destroyed in situ, along with supplies of food, clothing and uniforms. Although these camps had been well defended with anti-aircraft weapons, these were hastily dismantled and taken away by the terrorists in the face of our attacks. But they were unable to remove the ammunition which was located and destroyed. The explosions caused by these dumps and the ammunition hidden by the terrorists in the grass-thatched roofs of their huts were a constant reminder that once again the Rhodesian security forces had struck at the heart of Robert Mugabe's Zanla terrorist headquarters and his trained terrorist holding camps. The refugee camps, situated some 15 kilometers away in the area of Doroy, were unharmed. 25 bases were located during the period of these operations and were completely destroyed, thereby achieving our aims, which were, firstly, the disruption of the Zanla forces' command and control, as well as the disruption of the morale of the terrorists themselves. Secondly, the location and destruction of the terrorist bases. Thirdly, the obtaining of intelligence. And finally, the elimination of as many terrorists as possible. These operations are an ongoing exercise and will be maintained in the future for as long as is necessary to hit the terrorist where he is most vulnerable and concentrated. In this and other operations conducted during the month, we have struck a hard blow against the Zanla forces, which has had a marked effect on their ability to deploy forces into Rhodesia. There is a sense of desperation on the part of the Patriotic Front to deploy as many men as possible into Rhodesia to disrupt our intended elections. Vast quantities of arms, ammunition, food and clothing have been destroyed, which has taken them 10 months to collect, following our raid against these camps in November last year. The terrorist is not winning this war, and Mugabe would be better occupied talking about a peaceful solution.
time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to reap, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to laugh, a time to weep. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, 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 and a time for every purpose under heaven. A time to build up, a time to break down, a time to dance, a time to mourn, and a time to cast away stones, a time to gather stones together. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, 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 and a time for every purpose under heaven. A time to gain, a time to lose, a time to rent, a time to sow, a time to love, a time to hate, a time for peace. I swear it's not too late. Turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, 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 and a time for every purpose under heaven.
In the year 312, on the eve of battle, King Constantine is said to have had a vision where he saw a fiery cross in the heavens, beneath which was written, "By this sign thou shalt conquer." On the following day, Constantine was victorious in battle. Today, the Rhodesian Corps of Chaplains has adopted the sign, and as we fight the powers of darkness, in God we seek the strength that we may, in this sign, conquer.
The Rhodesian Corps of Chaplains has a very important part to play within the structure and well-being of our defense force in Rhodesia. Not every minister can become a chaplain. I think that a chaplain is somebody different from a normal minister of religion, and that his whole ministry works in a different area and arena from the normal parish priest. I think, first of all, physically, he must be able to get alongside the fellows and be able to keep up with the fellows. Secondly, I think that the chaplain has to have a tremendous amount of compassion. I think all ministers have to have this, but I think especially the chaplain in Rhodesia at the present moment, where there is so much that is happening and so many demands that are being made that require the mental and the physical and the spiritual compassion of the Padre, that he has to be there with them in their times of grief, in their times of joy. But I think, too, he has to be a man who lives close to Christ. For without the help and the sustenance of Christ, I don't think any minister would be able to cope with the problems and the difficulties and the frustrations of being a chaplain.
Being a chaplain is very, very demanding. There isn't much time for relaxation, and on the odd occasion when you are relaxing, the phone rings and you're called out. I'm lucky to have an understanding wife who backs me all the way. She understands the problems that are faced. Most of my work takes place after hours, and as a result of this, you don't see much of the family. My children hardly ever say hello. It's always goodbye, Daddy.
The Rhodesian Corps of Chaplains has to seek to inculcate into the minds of the men the reason why we are fighting this war. And as I see it, the reason we are fighting this war is to defend our country, Rhodesia, against the insidious movement of communism and atheism into southern Africa.
About 10 o'clock
on Sunday, February the 6th. 5 of our missioners were in the dining room listening to a TV news service. Father Martin Thomas was in his room in the community section of the mission. I myself was in my own room in the administrative block. There was a knock upon my door, and the Sister Magdala, one of the victims, called to me in rather a plaintive voice, "You are wanted, will you please come here?" I opened the door and was faced with a terrorist with a gun pointing at me, who ordered me to put up my hands and come out quietly. We were taken down past the dining room to a point where there's a gap in the hedge. 2 or 3 of the terrorists broke away and went down to the Dominican convent. No undue urgency seemed to possess them. We were not ordered into ranks or anything. We were left standing, loose formation, just standing across the roadway. At this stage, the other 2 or 3 terrorists returned, pushing ahead of them our oldest Dominican sister, Sister Epiphany. She was put into line with the rest of us, and then after some argument or discussion in the Shona language, the 3 terrorists stood out in front of us with their rifles at the ready, and the others then seemed to give some form of a command. At this moment, the 3 standing ahead of us opened fire, and I saw the center gun blazing. I instinctively half turned and fell to the ground. There was one continuous and short burst, and then silence. I lay still. It was probably only for a matter of seconds. And then, as there was dead silence around me, I began to realize that I had not been hit. So looking back on it, from the point of view of a missioner, realizing full well that the people perpetrating these horrendous deeds against those who are working for the well-being of the Africans, we were, understandably, I think, we were quite stunned. The brutality, of course, of the deed made us wonder, or should I correct that and say, left us with little to the imagination. It was so obvious that this was a real communistic attack.
In the training camps in Mozambique and Tanzania, we were taught that communism is the only way to salvation. Christianity and the church are the evil ways of Westerners, racists, capitalists, and imperialists.
The method, the deeds they perpetrated there, as in so many other places they have perpetrated such foul deeds, to our minds left no doubt whatsoever this was real Marxist communist effort. And is so much in opposition to our own ideals, so much in opposition to what we were trying to do for the Africans, to give them some understanding of the God we worship, the God they so little understand but are so willing to understand and to learn about.
When a white man came inside here, in our country, he brought the Bible on his left hand, the gun on his right hand. The two combined formed a weapon for the Westerners to oppress us inside our country here. So every comrade who believes in Christianity is not a true comrade and is not a communist. The aims of a comrade is to introduce and teach the people what communism is and what the Christians and the missionaries have done to us.
We've been questioned many a time the possibility of some mistake in those who perpetrated this crime. Had anybody else, any of you who are listening to this film, been present at such a time and seeing what I was mercifully spared to see, there can be no more doubt at all about the authority, the authorship of this crime.
We were taught that when we get into our operation areas, wherever we pass or if we demolish a bridge or a building, we must stick or write our slogans, blaming Christianity and the church. We were taught that when we meet the missionaries, in order to get support from them, we mustn't show them clearly that when we get the country, we'll chase them out of the country. Because we don't believe in Christianity, we believe in communism.
If you look across the border into the countries round about, you see how slowly but surely communism has crept into Africa. And I wouldn't even use the word crept. It seems to have come in like a flood in many of the countries. Now we in Rhodesia are here to show the difference between the life that is in Christ and the Christian way of life to that of communism. We are there to assist the men to find a living relationship with a living God.
Yeah, sometimes I think about God. I mainly think about, is he real?
Me, I can say God is correct. It's all right because he saved me several times.
Basically, you know, I've just never been I've never really thought much about him. But I can't, you know, accept him because basically I just don't believe. You never know, when I get older maybe I will. But at this moment I can't accept. Maybe it's because I've never put much thought into it.
Me, I can say I believe in God. Every night and every day night we must think of God because he helps us in this country.
I don't really believe in God because I sort of haven't had time. I don't know, it's just, to me it's a waste of time going to church. That's just about it.
Yes, I think about God, but not very often.
A lot of times when I've been in trouble, not necessarily army-wise, but civil-wise as well, I've got down next to my bed and prayed, and things just seem to come out right.
Yeah, I believe in God sometimes, but sort of in my own way.
What we seek to implant into the minds of these young men is the fact that their God, in and through Christ, can go with them. They need fear no evil, they need fear no ill, they need fear nothing if they have God with them. And after all, isn't this what this fight is all about in Rhodesia? And as one looks at the message of Christ, one becomes aware of the need for compassion. And this is what the chaplain has to show. It is essential that he shows compassion to those who stand in need of it. He needs to show compassion as he visits the hospitals. As the young men are brought in injured in their fight for freedom, it is the chaplain's duty to be there, to stretch out his hand to the young man, to pray with him, read with him, to be with his family in their hour of need, to be there as a bulwark and strength.
We fight for the right that men may know the claims of Jesus Christ, who for our sins died upon the cross, and for our salvation made the supreme sacrifice.
I remember one case of a young man who'd been injured right at the beginning of our Operation Hurricane. Visiting him in hospital, it was soon apparent that young Norman was never going to recover. And we had to be there to help him, to sit with him, to counsel him. And one afternoon I sat next to Norman's bed and said to him, "Norman, why don't you stretch out your hand to Christ and take him as your Savior?" And he said to me, "Look, Padre, look what he's done to me. Look at my body. I can't move." And when I pointed out to him that this was not the work of our God, our loving Heavenly Father, but rather the work of evil men who would seek to come in and overthrow and destroy all that was Christian, he then fell silent after we had discussed the claims of Christ a bit longer. And after his silence, I thought he had gone off to sleep. I then watched him very closely as the one arm in which he had movement, he picked it up and then he stretched it out. And he said to me, he said, "Look, Padre," he said, "I'm reaching out to Jesus. And this to me is what the chaplain is there for."
On September the 5th, Zimbabwe Rhodesian Air and Ground Forces attacked and destroyed 5 major road and rail bridges in the Gaza province of Mozambique. These bridges were of major strategic military importance to the FPLM Zanla incursion plan and the further build-up of armaments and logistics to support joint forces operating in our country. By September the 7th, 16 major targets had been destroyed or seriously damaged.
The molasses are turning to gold and to red. In the light of the sun they're like fires. When the winter has gone and time has moved on, the memory will never grow tired. She taught me to live and she taught me to love. She told me about spring and September. She showed me the good times, she taught me to laugh. She showed me how to remember. The molasses are turning to gold and to red. In the light of the sun they're like fires. When the winter has gone and time has moved on, the memory will never grow tired.